Okay, thank you. Good evening, welcome. This is the third meeting of the Acton Marijuana Committee. We have a few folks missing tonight, but we're going to go ahead and see what we can get done in about an hour or so. There's been quite a bit of activity, including this afternoon, so why don't we just kind of go down the line and report what we know and what we've, some of which I haven't reported on, a couple of small things, but it might be of interest. We do know that there's two of us so far going to the MMA seminar.
If you are, then that would make three. Carol Long is going.
Oh, she is? Okay, I didn't see that. Okay, all right. So at least three, and Carol Ward is not?
No, Carol Ward is going. I don't know about Carol Long.
Gotcha.
I got the two Carols mixed up.
So at least three, so I will call Jennifer tomorrow or email her.
Yeah, she said, she sent us all an email, and she said, just
Yes.
let her know, and she'll do it over the weekend.
Okay. She
And
may be,
I'm sure it'd be easy to do add-ons.
she may be working tomorrow, so I'm not really sure.
But she said by noon tomorrow, and she'd take care of it over the weekend.
Okay, do you want to talk about the
Sure.
interview, which I missed?
Sure. We had
First of all, you got that, you had a conversation with Dan Tarkin, I don't know how to spell his, mention his last name, he's in a, analyst with the legislature.
Yeah, at Oakland,
Oakland,
right.
yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about those folks and what they've done. And
Okay.
then,
Yeah, he actually wrote the new law.
well,
I mean, he was the overseer of the whole thing, apparently. That's what he was.
there's three land analysts that work with that committee for
Right.
the last 7 or 8 months. And he's the weather, so there was a lot of input from a lot of people. He would be,
Well, he took the input, and he was the one
writing.
that kind of wordsmithed it,
Okay.
apparently, yeah.
excellent. Do you want to lead off with? what
Sure.
happened this
So
afternoon?
we had a call this afternoon with the city manager and director of finance for Liberty Lake, Washington. They're on the border with Idaho, 16 miles east of Spokane, 5 miles from the border with Idaho.
And Idaho is not
Idaho is not legal. They're also, as she told us, an hour from Montana.
is also not.
Which is
Do
also
you know
not
if those
legal.
states have medical marijuana going now?
I don't know, but what she did indicate was that Washington no longer does medical marijuana because you don't need a prescription to buy retail, so
Okay.
have at it.
Which is what we heard from our medical marijuana folks on the public hearings. They were worried about that their business would disappear. So
Right.
I'm not sure if that's the great characterization of what happened in Washington, but.
I think it's actually a choice by the legislature to just do away with it.
They did away with it.
So basically what had happened was their town had voted 70% against
In the
in the election around the initiative. The town council was also not favorable towards marijuana, but they were afraid for two reasons to ban it. The first was that some state legislators were saying if you don't allow marijuana, we may not let you collect liquor taxes. And then they were also afraid that if they banned it outright, they might get sued. So they went down the path of a very restrictive ordinance, or so they thought. And what they did was they zoned 1,000 feet from not only schools and churches and playgrounds, but trailheads, school bus stops, and a variety of other things.
1,000 feet from all of these?
Oh, yes. So when you looked at the map, and they were very nice to share with us,
What did they,
The ordinance.
I'm sorry to keep you interrupting, what did they prohibit for retail sales?
any operations at all,
Grow,
within 1,000,
testing, everything?
within 1,000 feet of these things. So if you look at the lot maps that they had, because it's only a 6-square-mile town, there were only a couple of usable lots. And they thought they had themselves pretty covered. They thought they were being cute. And what they found out was somebody bought one of those lots, got licensed, and put in a request for authorization, build permit for the town for a social club, which is defined differently apparently in Washington. It's retail or social club. It's your choice, right?
Not both, though. You can be,
No,
No,
in Washington, it's both,
you can be both
yes.
in one facility.
So, now, they started to recognize that out of the 281 or so towns, 90 had banned it outright. So they then moved to ban. So they now have
You're talking about the state.
the council
Oh,
of the town,
local
of the
council.
city. So they did put a ban in place, but they already have this grandfathered location, which hasn't started building yet. They surmise that the person is running low on funds or isn't finding the financing to build the social club. Their nearest retail outlet is 3 miles north, and
In an adjacent town.
no, actually, so forgive me while I depart from this. I asked the question because we've been finding, I mentioned this last week, all the cities in Colorado and in Washington State seem to be very small square miles, very high density. So I asked, and they're all retail, so I asked them, what about the area outside of town? Who controls that? And it's all county
County government.
taken care of, okay? So we're gonna have to add county government to our list of folks to chat with about grow operations, because I think we're just gonna find retail in most of the cities.
Well, in Maine, you won't find any county.
No, I know, but I meant in Colorado and Washington State.
I hear you. Well,
information from
that's a
them.
good point, because El Paso County is a similar situation. It has Colorado Springs in it. And it's out, well, a lot of places out west and in Maryland, other states, the trickle-down of government is, the towns don't mean squat in a lot of them. As far as trickle-down power, counties rule in a lot of
Yep.
the states. Like in Maryland, that's,
County government does.
yeah, county government runs everything. And I'm getting the impression from my brother who lives in Colorado Springs, that in El Paso County has quite a bit of power. So it's probably a similar kind of situation.
So what I'm gonna do, we had talked to the head of the Colorado Counties Incorporated, the policy director.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna ask him to get us in touch with some of the border counties in Colorado, and then do the same thing in Washington potentially. But anyway, just to finish the story out on this, so I forget which interstate it is, but there's an interstate that's the northern border of the town. They have about, I think they said 30% of the people in town that work in town are from Idaho anyway, because I'd asked if they'd seen any additional traffic. But basically the way it works is, you get off the interstate, you go south to the town, or you go north and you hit that retail location.
One that's functioning.
Right. And what
It
they.
would be I-80.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what they said that I thought was particularly helpful was a couple things. One, that they had originally done a moratorium, they'd extended it once, and then canceled it once they'd put their zoning in place, so that supports what we've been suggesting. The second thing was, she mentioned that the retail location north of town was, I think she used the phrase rustic, and then later described it as a rat hole. And basically just said it was kind of a ratty old building that they'd painted with a big green marijuana leaf. She said, what we have in our town based on zoning is actually a fairly upscale affair. When they build it out, they've promised to do quite a few upgrades and so on the property. So she said, you might want to consider that as you look.
There's no building there now. They bought a lot and they.
I believe that's the case, yeah. So, that's everything from that meeting, unless, Mike, there's anything you want
No,
to add?
I had trouble listening to a lot of it, because I was in the car, and it was, but you nailed it pretty good, other than, when we were talking about buffer zones, I wanted her to clarify what, and she did, she meant, they didn't change their limits, the state limits, which is 1,000 feet, they changed the points where that 1,000 feet was, like, in other words, they added to the actual points that buffer zones were indicated. So, there was that, and then I asked them about if there were any buffer zones regarding alcohol in the town, and she said no. And that's something I'd like to know about Acton also. Is there buffers, is there, buffers for the Acton Trading Post? Is there buffers for the bars, Iron Tails, et cetera? Because it seems odd that, the only thing that I can come up with as to why all these states are doing the more strict distant buffer situation would be to keep the feds off their back per.
That is precisely the reason.
Right,
for it. Absolutely.
That's, and I see no reason, I have no problem with the 1,000-foot buffer, that doesn't bother me at all. I just like to know why things are happening that way, because it's certainly not fair if you're operating a legitimate business, but fairness doesn't matter, it's all about,
Politics.
well, yeah, that, and the feds don't want us to do it,
Okay.
they literally don't want us to do it, and we have to be careful, so. The state is overcorrecting, and I don't blame them, because they don't want to have an issue pop up. That's was one of the fears, and that's a big fear in Colorado right now, is Colorado is now the state with a target on its back.
The fear being the people who have invested in these businesses.
Yeah, and the state too, because they're raking in big dollars. There's no doubt about that. There's, the state themselves are bringing in significant money, and they don't want to lose that now.
Tell me again, so it was schools, churches, what were they added, school bus stops?
Mhm. Trailheads.
Trailhead, that was an interesting.
So this is what they have specifically. Elementary or secondary schools, including bus stop locations, playgrounds, recreational centers or facilities, child care centers, parks, public transit centers, including transit bus stop locations, the library. This is a state requirement, game arcades where admission's not restricted,
How big is this town again? So,
6 square miles.
yeah, but what population?
9,000.
So they might have all of these things.
Yep.
that you just mentioned.
Churches and religious facilities, access points for the Centennial Trail and other public trails within the city of Liberty Lake. So, and I didn't print it off, but they have the attached, I'll send this out tonight, but they have attached their property map for the city. And when you look at the buildable,
So they have a computer that can basically identify each location and then give you the 1,000 feet.
and when you look at it, there's not many locations that would make sense, so.
Because it's more of a built-up suburban area than,
Town is.
yeah, in that respect, we're nowhere close. The comparison with us is different. Also, probably the way that school buses operate there is probably different. Here, they stop in front of every house, that has a kid. So, it's a whole different ballgame. And there again, I think that's one of those things where we might just want to go with the state, whatever the state says, rather than add to it.
I think their point was, well taken though, too. Do you want kids waiting for a bus in front of, a retail location for pot, right?
Well, that's where we have that choice of zoning,
Precisely.
where we allow it to happen, and we have the square mileage to do that,
Yep.
so I think that can be averted, without even making it an issue. Because if let's say somebody builds on a 5-acre lot where we've designated it as, zoned it, because everything's going to be zoned in this town. I doubt we're ever going to zone a specific area that won't be allowed to have residences, because that's what we are. We're a residential bedroom
It
community.
would be hard unless it was a swamp in the back.
Right, unless it's some kind of DEP thing or what have you.
Which we have some of.
Right, but what I mean is just because we allowed a retail operation, we're not going to create zones that, let's say that 5 acres next to it is a big 10-acre lot that somebody buys and builds a house on, that, then that conflict would happen, if they built a house.
But then they grandfathered too, so.
Yeah, I know, but we could avoid it by just not even making it an issue, If you want to build there, then you're going to build next to the pot shop, or you're going to build next to the grow, or what have you,
The one thing that they mentioned that I found interesting, and I don't know what it is here, but I guess there's a 5-year lifespan with it, if you use all the extensions on a building permit. And I asked them, I said, if,
I didn't think it was that long. You think it's
Well,
5 years?
sorry, this is in Washington,
Oh, okay.
Liberty Lake.
Okay.
And I asked them, I said, is that transferable? And said, oh, yes, he could sell that. So I don't know if we do something here, if that building permit is transferable, but I would think that somebody who's licensed, who gets a building permit to do something, I don't think we'd want that to be transferable.
If you develop, as I understand it, when the state finally comes down, if you decide to develop an ordinance, it could say that. It could say that if
Right.
a permit, if the town grants a permit, it's good for X number of
Yeah, I
months or
think the town
years.
has control over that, right?
Yes, but we wouldn't have to piggyback on our building permit thing. We could create a different, apparently. we could
I'm just saying it's something for us to keep in mind that,
Because the wording, basically, in the state thing is, the building permit is, we're putting the cart before the horse here, because the rules surrounding, based on the law that was just passed, the rules of transfer of ownership of a license is very convoluted and difficult. We would have a whole, if somebody was gonna, they'd have to, if they wanted to transfer the permit, they'd have to have the license in order to come to us, and the state's gonna treat them just like a brand-new owner. So they're gonna have to jump through that state hoop of what they call the conditional license first, then come to us, secure the spot that they wanna buy,
so
so that they're gonna be vetted twice to three times.
I think Richard has made the statement a couple times that that's the current legislation, and legislation
Right.
changes. So I think that we should make sure, or
Oh,
should
yeah,
at
we
least
can put in
consider,
anything we want.
it's the old
but-
thing of belts and suspenders, right? You want
Right.
to make sure that you're covered.
Right, oh, I don't
regardless
say
of
we
how the law
shouldn't, we
changes.
shouldn't do that, it's just, the state is making it more, they're a much more convoluted process than the state of Washington does for their licensing. I mean, that whole conditional license thing is, I think it's a great idea, because it gives the state a chance to really check into this person or persons who want to buy, set up a operation, well, no matter what it is. And then they, if they get that conditional license, then they can come to Acton, to whatever town, and say, can I come in, can I get here? That conditional license is good for a year. And if that town says, no, we don't want you for whatever reason, you're not meeting our requirements, they go to another town or another town. But if we say, yes, you can, then they go back to the state and get their active license, and they have to jump through another set of hoops. So I like that double whammy, because I'm not concerned about criminals as such, because I think that's going to be weeded out during the criminal check on the conditional license. I'm more worried about sleazy businessmen, people with deep pockets from away, but there again, the state is trying to address that too with the 2-year residency thing. So, I think the state of Maine is making some right decisions at this point. That doesn't mean Slick Willies can't figure,
Well, it
like you
doesn't-
say, suspenders and a belt, there's always,
Over time, it's going to change. I mean, what worries me is that we already have two facilities in town that could easily, and I'm sure, based on the attendants that are hearing already, the one of them at least is already interested in either Iron Tails or Willie's becoming a marijuana place.
that
And
won't
so-
happen.
Well, not under the current rules, but
Right.
one of the things that's going to come under pressure is, well, I've got this facility, and if I can convince the inspector that I can put a door or block traffic from one side of the building to the other, that's the same as two separate facilities, and therefore I should be entitled to be able to, do marijuana and liquor.
Well, there is specific language about how close a liquor operation
Yeah.
can be to a marijuana operation.
I know there is now, all this language is now, and.
Right, yeah, and
so-
that's all I can really base my,
Well,
but-
but the one thing I would throw out there to you, Mike, is this, right? Colorado, I think, had it right when their law first came out. They allowed no vertical integration.
right,
So if you were a grower, you couldn't be a manufacturer or a retailer and vice versa.
Right.
And they eliminated that.
Right.
And that's when real money started pouring into Colorado, and it was, to your point, from away.
Right.
So the lobbying that goes on to change these laws, I'm going to look at what's in the state law. Again, I'm not a fan of this,
Mhm.
but if we're going to do it, by God, we're going to do it right. And we're going to do it right without respect to the state and what the current law is.
what is built into this law is the autonomy of the town. The town has a whole lot more power under this law than it does under of the bunch of the others, and I think it's probably because of the power of trickle from the state government,
I think
goes
it's-
from the state
Yeah,
to
I
the
think it's
counties.
because that was very attractive in the referendum process. The town is going to have the right, I think that got them a lot of votes,
Mhm.
basically. And so, but over time, that's going to be problematic. The legislature's going to be, especially if big money is out there pushing it. It already is. If you look at Sanford, the grow operations that are going on in the old mills down there, and those people that are doing that are fairly significant business people in Sanford. And so that's not big money in the sense of,
Not like in Colorado, no.
no.
Right.
But I mean, it indicates that if big money's involved, they're going to be there. And
Well, if it's any indication, the cannabis convention that was in Portland a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
A year ago, it was in 15,000 square feet, and this year it was 70,000 square feet. So big money's coming.
oh yeah.
And I think it was estimated that 3 times as many people attended it.
Yeah.
So it was well attended, yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of pressure to make the changes that are going to make it easier for big money to operate. But that happens on everything. It's not
Right, and
just
that's
about
where we
marijuana.
need to put in the rules, if we're gonna do it, put in rules that, even if we say no, we should have rules sitting on the shelf in case big money is able to force something at the state level.
Yeah.
And then we have rules that say, okay, this is the only place that you can do this, or this is the only way you can do this. If you don't do it this way, I mean, as long as they can't knock out that town autonomy thing,
Well,
I think
that'll
that's
come
gonna
under-
be
That
what
will come
saves
under
us.
attack pretty quickly. If, towns under, 4,000 are going to have a separate set of rules from the state. It won't take long. It'll be 5 years out before we
Right,
see that
but if we
happen.
have rules sitting ready, waiting,
Yep.
then maybe we can.
Well, maybe
force
it's the
something.
best we can do, let's put it that way.
Right,
I'm
because
sorry,
I don't
Richard.
want to see what happens.
Are you suggesting that and again, I haven't watched state politics that well, but are you suggesting that the state has changed legislation for smaller towns from?
Well, we've had, sure, on zoning, there is already a category, of towns over 4,000 and towns under 4,000 for certain types of zoning, shoreline zone. You can do certain things based on your population, so there's already a history of that. But the more important thing is the history of changing legislation to meet current, and it doesn't take long. I mean, long enough for people to forget how we got there, and that's probably 4 or 5 years, basically. And 4 or 5 years out, you won't recognize what this is, based on what's happening in the state, especially if there's money to be made. I mean, there's no doubt about
The
it.
interesting-
Can I ask you about the name of this town?
Yes, Liberty Lakes.
Is there a lake involved?
There is a lake there.
There's a
Liberty
lake,
Lake State Park.
it's adjacent to the town, it's not part of the actual town
Right.
itself.
So you don't have a lot of summer people there necessarily. It's more of a state park than it is.
I think
It's
that's
a state park.
The whole lake
The lake is part of the state park, yes. At least it looks like it's in its borders, and then the town sits a little bit west of it.
So it's not like Acton, and then they have a lot of lakefront property.
No, there's not much lake. That's western Washington, which is
Pretty dry.
pretty prairie-like,
Yeah.
for the most part.
The other thing that struck me, not having participated in the discussion, that's near Spokane. Now, Spokane, eastern Washington is quite a bit different than western Washington.
Yeah, it's
You
like,
got-
it's like
she made
Eastern.
that case.
It's
She
very
said-
conservative out there. I
Yeah,
mean,
she-
you saw
She
the
said,
vote on
she
that.
said the I-5 corridor, Seattle and so on, is what really put this over.
Yeah.
Although Spokane has embraced marijuana, and, it's a college town, and,
Yeah.
she didn't bring up the issue they had apparently with the clerk who was killed was actually killed by 2 folks who'd come off the Indian reservation, didn't have the
Oh,
federal
couldn't buy.
lands, couldn't buy.
What does federal lands have to do with where they live? They lived on a reservation.
reservation, which is federal land.
So why couldn't they buy, they were still citizens?
It's against
But they're not on federal lands
but they didn't have proper identification. So
okay.
they wouldn't sell it to them, right? And they came back and abducted the guy and
But
killed
they're still citizens of Washington, right? They should have been able to have a driver's
They're
license.
citizens. They're citizens of the reservation.
Indian thing is pretty weird out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. They're almost,
Federally recognized tribes, and so.
right, but they're almost, what do you call it, of the state?
Sovereign nation.
Not sovereign, but they're almost, when you're,
Ward of the
you
state.
rely on the state for everything.
A ward of the state.
Ward of the state, of only the federal government, not the state.
But they must be able to vote and get a driver's
But
license.
they vote federal, they don't vote state.
They don't even vote for
No,
state
it's-
elections.
It's, like I said, it's
They're on
strange.
federal land, so
I understand
they're
that.
not,
but
they're not part of this, they're their own nation.
Right.
In that state.
I mean, we have tribal land in Maine, and and they're federally recognized tribes, but they don't have that. I mean, they have a driver's
But they're
license,
not
they
on a-
can
But
vote.
they're not on a reservation.
Well, we
And
have
they're not-
reservations in Maine.
And they're also
Indian
not-
Island and,
They're not in the state of Washington. They're not in the
It's
state of Arizona. They're still, what do you call it?
Tribal.
Vein of serious prejudice in the
Yeah.
West.
oh, yeah.
Okay, I mean, and it's ongoing, and it's
So neither here nor
part of,
there for
it's a
the
fact of the life
plaintiffs.
out there.
The point I was making was, there was, to Mike's point, some, serious anger involved, right? So.
Yeah.
That's what drove that.
They were prohibited from buying what they wanted to buy, and they were angry about that.
The thing that I emailed this week, some of the Washington State
Yes.
legislation and so on. And the one thing that I saw, and I copied it to you guys, was around, they prohibit the use of a septic system for wastewater.
I was hoping that James was going to be here today.
I was too, and I asked him that question, he hasn't responded to it. So that's interesting to me, which is odd because you won't allow it in a septic system, but you'll allow an outdoor grow.
Yeah.
How are they different? And does that have any implications for us if we would want to approve an indoor grow?
Won't they allow an indoor grow? Cannot be
Well-
hooked to a septic system?
What they're basically saying is the wastewater from growing
Which could be significant for a hydroponic system.
cannot be
And
put
that'd be
into a
the
septic
reason,
system.
because outdoor grows, you don't use as much actual water.
Okay.
But
a
it's
whole
not
different
about
ballgame.
pesticides, it's really about the water use. Maybe it's
Well,
all about water use.
I
out there.
believe, so they have strict rules with respect to the grow.
Yeah.
So apparently you can sell trimmings, as you guys saw that you reported last week
Yeah.
on the taxes, the excise taxes. But for the trimmings that you don't sell, for the root balls and everything, they have very strict rules for how you dispose of it, okay? And you literally have to have it, in Colorado, you have to have it in an isolation room for 72 hours. You notify the state, I'm going to dispose of this. They have the right to come in and inspect it. Then you grind it up, you have to mix it with 50%, compost of other stuff to make it unusable, and then it can be transferred to a waste treatment facility, or used as compost. But there are certain wastes that aren't permitted into landfills and aren't permitted into septic systems, this wastewater. And I'm interested, because if that's the case, if there's an environmental reason why, then we need to understand that, whether that applies in.
They didn't really say if it's pesticides that they're concerned about it, or just volume of water.
Right.
I mean,
Well, I've started to delve into, since I can't do it for the recreational side of it, because the rules actually have not been written.
Right.
I've been looking into the medicinal side. And I'm figuring that if the Department of Agriculture and Forestry is not going to rewrite the rules for that type, for pesticide use, for recreational, if they've set up something for medicinal. Because let's face it, medicinal is going to be a lot more, you would think that would be a lot more strict guidelines.
Only difference, though, is the density of grow is very different between the two.
What do you mean density of grow?
When you're growing for medicinal, you're growing for a certain number of patients. So you're not going to be growing 3,000 square feet of canopy or more.
And that's fine and dandy, but if, let's say you have a grow that's a dispensary that has 1,000 patients, and that's that's in these are already up and running in the state.
We have about 8 of them in the state, but
Yeah.
big ones.
So to me, for the big grow, there's one in Sanford that's huge, that's already good sized.
Well, my question is huge, is how big?
I'm not sure exactly, but I think around 500 patients.
But what kind of canopy would that be versus retail?
I
I'm just
don't know, I
curious.
haven't been in there, but
Be
it
interesting
would
to find out.
probably be about the same, and those are questions we need to find out. I'm talking about just the rules of pesticide use at this point, which I would think that for medicinal, it would be a stricter guideline for medicinal product than if nothing else, so in other words, I don't think they're gonna rewrite it, so I'm looking at that, and there's a definite flow chart. They have definite rules, and I haven't been able to chase down the exact place, but there's two lists of pesticides that are allowed. They have to be registered with the state. They have to be registered with the EPA. There's all these guidelines. I looked through the convolutions to apply them. James must have a pesticide application license, because according to the way this reads, is if you don't have it and you haven't registered that pesticide with the DEP, with the Department of Agriculture, then you're breaking the law by using it. And I just don't have that list of actual pesticides, but they're quite.
There's a board, a pesticide control board.
Right, and that's where I got to the other day, and then I got sort of stopped, sidetracked. Let's see, I had some stuff in here. In the new law there's all sorts of stuff, but where did I?
You pretty much covered what you wanted. So you're going to talk also about your conversation with the OPLA analyst?
Right.
You've written some of the stuff, I read it.
Yeah, what I basically what I had said in my email was, the law is passed, but then the real work starts by the various agencies now have to write the rules for their specific corner of that law. And like I said, I'm looking at the Department of Agriculture and Forestry is covering a lot of them, because this whole marijuana thing is under their venue, which is also, to back up a little bit, that could be a problem with the feds.
Yeah.
That they didn't put it under the alcohol.
I think
And
that's gonna be-
LePage's complaint about that
That's
is
what the government
legitimate,
said,
right, is legitimate, because that could be an inroad for the feds to come in and say, you're not listening to us, but Maine decided to do it that way. So anyway, a lot of the rulemaking is going to come out of the Department of Agriculture and Forestry, and they won't start writing the rules or officially writing the rules until this law is actually law. And then he said that rulemaking is going to take optimistically 4 to 6 months. And he said, I'm saying optimistically. He says that it could be, you add that in, then you add in the legislature, they have to take the rules, give them back to the legislature, the various committees, they look them over, make their little changes or not, give them back to the rulemakers, and then the rulemakers, then it's all incorporated into the law. The law is then re-presented to the legislature for approval. He says it's going to be well into 2019 before a license is issued in this state. So we're down the road, we're looking at well over a year and a half away before the first license is kicked in, which then also, while it gives us more time, it also gives the people with the deep pockets more time to figure out ways around it. So,
And find locations.
yeah,
Do all the
to
work.
do what they do to do what they do. Let's see, what else was it? There was one other thing that he was talking about. That was the MMA where they were coming up with the model ordinance, which I think will be real helpful for us.
He mentioned that?
No, he didn't. Melissa White at MMA did. And, because I made the phone calls on the same day. Actually, no, I didn't, but Melissa White said that, he's the one that mentioned it, that MMA was making, and I confirmed it with Melissa.
Okay.
And, so that'll be real helpful for us to look at, to see what their idea is, because I'm sure they're drawing from experienced people, well, specifically in writing ordinances. So that's where I'm at right now, and I'm currently looking into trying to get the list of pesticides. I'm specifically interested in trying to find out what the limits if there's limits on nutrients, because, people are concerned about pesticides, but that's, in the grow world, or in agriculture in general, pesticides are reactive. You use them in a reactive way generally. So what we really should be concerned with is the nutrients that they're pumping into the ground / hydroponic systems.
Right.
Because they're going to use those. They're not going to use pesticides if they don't need them. So that's been the tricky part, and I want to get a hold of somebody in Department of Agriculture to find out what that's all about. So that's where I'm at this point.
It would also be the fungicides that they're going to use.
Well, fungicides, right. Well, the state of Maine the state of Maine Pesticide Control Board defines a pesticide as a fungicide, a pest, as anything that inhibits the growth. A weed is a pest. So fungicides fall under the pesticide thing, so all of that is under one umbrella, if you will. So, yeah, fungicides, because that's, the pests that hit plants generally in the outdoor world, and marijuana, powdery mildew and black mold are the two biggies. And it hits, the apple farms and all of them. Everybody gets that. And I wanted to look into what they do and what kind of controls they have on theirs, because the apple orchards just sprayed into the air.
Yeah, but they're pretty well regulated.
Oh, yeah, well, you
Right.
look at the medicinal side.
Yeah.
You have to have a license to do it. You can't, if you're growing medicinal pot, you have to have certification from the state. The pesticide you're using has to be registered, and they make you pass a test and everything. So, I mean, they're as regulated, I would say, as the apple folks. So in that respect, I'm not overly concerned, but then again, I'm more concerned about the nutrients.
And that might be where the septic system comes in, because if they're dumping a lot of, the stuff that would normally be a runoff, if you're a cattle farmer, for instance, it's running into the streams, it's the same thing. It's nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen, basically, polluting.
Well, nitrogen is pretty, that's not a real big issue per se. The phosphorus can be a bigger deal, but pot plants don't like a lot of phosphorus anyway. So, that's not as big an issue. But it's just, in the hydroponic world, it's just, I need to know more about it, but I do know in the hydroponic world, there's a lot more of it. It's always there in the water.
Has to be.
With outdoor grows, you douse your plants once every couple weeks, or, it depends on your schedule, depends on what people want to put in it, but it's only done intermittently. It's not every day, constantly. That's why one of the reasons indoor grows can do it in a 12-week cycle, whereas outdoor grows generally, well, they're relying on the sun, so they're relying on the season. It's daylight, so, whereas indoors, you can force it all in.
Any questions?
Well, I did have one thought. Well, actually, I wanted to know, how did the meeting go on Tuesday with the selectmen?
Good. There probably was, first of all, I was surprised that this committee, having had only 2 meetings, was getting pretty good, see if everybody else agrees with us, pretty good reports. I think people were comfortable that we were meeting and we're going to deal with this. Is that fair? Is that a fair
I would say, so far, I've got nothing but positive
Yeah,
input.
so that's a good thing.
Yeah,
So,
right.
there wasn't all that many people. There may have been maybe 10 or 12 people that testified.
Yeah, I think the 3 of us were
Yeah.
1/3 of the crowd, right?
So there wasn't all that many people that showed up. Nobody was adamant or angry.
Yeah,
or-
there were no,
everybody was
Right.
pretty reasonable, and I guess surprised there was one gentleman, you may know him, he's a real estate broker, I think. He came in, I hadn't seen him at any meetings before. Rob.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Rob,
I don't know him, I just met him at this meeting. He used to
Yeah.
work with one of my old partner at the old bike shop in Sanford.
I don't know how active he is. I know he's in the real estate business, which might be of interest to us, but he's he was a new face. I hadn't seen him before.
Which reminds me, I haven't talked to my friend in Sanford, Jason Trowbridge, recently, but I was just wondering when we thought we might like to have him come in and answer some questions. So he'll give us the skinny on what's going on in Sanford for sure, and his perspective, and he's already said, I won't make it a lobbyist thing. He says, I want the towns to have as much information as they can, and I really wish more towns are doing it like we are, at least reaching out to find out as much as we can get. There's no such thing as too much information.
I don't,
In
we
what
might
we're
as well
doing.
get it sooner rather than later.
I'd be fine with next week.
Next week, if you.
Okay, I'll contact him and see
And if
if
that's not
he's willing to
convenient
come
for
in.
him, we
Because
can-
I'd like to put his feet to the fire about a few things. I already did about the sales tax thing. And that was our last contact, because, he was using that as one of his pitches is, the money side. And I have to back off of that. The money is not, I'm looking at it now as, getting a viable, legitimate business that's run under strict rules, that's probably run under better rules than any other business in town. I mean, from what I understand, in other states, the state has got their thumb on these people, and it can't get out of hand.
Well,
I mean,
We don't know.
it can't get out of hand in the way of being, in other words, we're not seeing the crime, we're not seeing,
I'll be,
we're not seeing,
by the same token, though, I mean, if we're talking retail as opposed to grow, and we're not making any money on it, why the hell would we incur the extra traffic?
well, okay, we have a legitimate business in town with a good property tax base, because that's,
Property tax is no different than the property tax that's being paid today. We're not gonna collect any more property tax with another business.
yes, you are, why aren't you? Okay,
the
a
property
property
tax
with a building on it is taxed at a different rate than 5 acres of just forest or meadow.
Somebody's gonna build a building.
If they're
or
gonna
use-
build,
Well, they're gonna have to build, we're gonna make that part of
I
our,
think we're hearing that most of these operations are using existing buildings, so.
tell me, how many existing buildings do we have in
you got
town?
the dentist
that-
shop up there, you
Right.
got
And that's, right, and that comes into the zoning thing.
It depends on how much we zone it to death.
What's that?
It depends on how much we zone it to death,
Right,
is
But I
how
mean-
much we would get back.
There is some existing buildings that could be used. They aren't very big, so it's not gonna be.
But even so, the property tax that we would collect on a 5-acre property with a building is gonna be how much more, Richard?
Well,
$1 grand, $2 grand?
Depends on what they, if,
A year.
on the property tax, if they put a lot of stuff in it.
But if we're not taxing,
Yeah,
I don't
that's-
know
that was
that
a
we're taxing
disappointing thing I
property
heard,
elsewhere,
yeah.
right?
and I wonder why, that's a whole different art.
Different discussion for different
Yeah,
committee.
right, but-
But my point is, 2 grand, let's say it's 2 grand a year, maybe,
Yeah,
let's say it's 3 grand a year.
It's not gonna be much.
Is that enough to justify the traffic into the town? I'm not sure.
Well, in one of our earlier discussions, not the committee, but the public discussions about this, there were a few folks that look at this and see business opportunity. And my sense is there is an opportunity, but it's not going to be for the town, it's going to be for the owner.
Well,
That's where the money is going to
ultimately,
be. The
that's
town
what-
is
that's-
not going to, I can't see where the town is going to get much in additional revenue from this, either by the state's plan or from property tax, but.
Well, no, and I'm not looking at this, that's just part of it.
Okay.
I'm also looking at it in terms of, it's, like I said the other day in front of the meeting, was that this town is not an industrial town, it's not a town, it's a bedroom community, it's also a recreational community. And, the people that rent cottages, and there's sizable numbers of them that rent cottages on the lakes, and we have a bunch of them, they come up here to recreate. When people recreate, they let their hair down, and I think it would be something of enticement, something of, oh, well, I don't need to bring it up from my home with me. I can just buy some while I'm there, and I don't have to worry about being stopped or what have you. It's part of catering to that recreational tourist mentality. That brings more money into the town.
But having said
Yeah, I'm
that,
not sure, I heard you say that the other day, and I just can't believe that the people that live here are gonna be too thrilled with that possibility. I'll give you one example of that. In the high rent district around Kennebunk Port, Kennebunk Wells, the rentals will go on there. It was popular for a while for people to rent and then have a wedding, have a big party there. And that was a real problem for the police down there, because all of a sudden you had the neighborhood inundated with a ton of people, a loud wedding or party going on in a rental. And I think most of those towns have tried to do what they can to stop that now. And
I'm not sure I understand how that,
Okay.
how that
and let me
relates.
make a different, I get your point, but let me make a different one. Pot use amongst adults in Colorado is reported to be, I think, about 30%. So that means 70% aren't using. Fair enough.
Actually, it's lower than that. It's, according to what I just finished reading, was pot use. Well, actually, it's more than, yes, I mean, you're being way conservative.
So
but-
my
right.
point being, there's a lot of people coming up to recreate with their kids who wouldn't necessarily see this as a plus, and it could actually harm the town. So again, I don't think you and I are gonna come to ground on that between us, and that's okay. But I would also say that, I don't see the money from sales tax, I don't see the money from property tax. I don't see a huge benefit to the town. I do see a benefit for an owner, potentially, and the chance of another,
And if our property is cheaper than, say, Sanford, somebody can come up here, buy 100 acres and develop a big grow operation, that's going to be a significant reduction in the cost of starting that kind of operation, being in Acton as opposed to being in Sanford, I think. Now, I mean, that's,
Well,
we have relatively cheap land.
They won't have to build a building in Sanford.
Yeah, they have those mills, apparently.
Right, oh, the mills there's all kinds of square footage available there.
and I think the reality is, indoor grow is probably what you'd want in Sanford. And if somebody wants to do an outdoor grow here, I think we need to think about, again, do we want that in the town? If we do, then I think we need to follow some decent rules.
Right.
For example, in Colorado, I believe, I don't know whether it's Colorado or Washington now, but if you have an outdoor grow, we need to set the limits to the property line.
Oh, yeah, there's,
Significant limits on that. Secondly, there needs to be at least an 8-foot fence ringing the whole property with limited access, with cameras, with recording material, with, I wouldn't be
Well,
sorry if it
that's-
had razor wire, for God's sake.
well, that's, in my opinion, anybody that's
that
sinking
business.
serious jingle into a commercial outdoor grow, they're gonna do that anyway, because.
Well, whether or not they're gonna do it anyway, because to your point, the guy who wants to make a boatload of money on this quick is gonna do it as cheaply as they can, okay? So we need to make sure we protect the
Right,
town.
oh, I realize it, and in the new law, there again, those are rules that have yet to be written, but
But we can write our rules.
that's right, and that's what we should do, so that, and then we look at what the state comes up with and go, oh, okay, maybe we should go with theirs, because theirs is theirs is a better one, or,
You said something on the phone today, when we were talking about the percentage of folks that voted,
79%.
where?
Here.
Yeah, no, not so much, my friend. I called Jennifer, because that number didn't ring true to me. These are the actual numbers. 832 voted yes, 651 voted no, 56% to 44%, okay? So it's not as clear
I'd like to know
cut.
where I got my figures, then. I'll have to
Well,
look that.
you might have gotten the fact, maybe it was 79% of the people who were eligible to vote voted. That may be true, because there was 1,497 votes cast total.
Okay,
I don't know what the voting population of Acton is.
Yeah.
There's only 2,400 people, so it can't, and there's got a bunch of
that
kids.
might have been my figure. Okay, so you
So-
stand corrected.
Yeah,
So
so,
it's very close, and when we get down to do the end of this, whether we create an ordinance or whether we have, however we end this thing, I'm gonna be surprised if, and we're gonna get a good measure on the moratorium, I guess. I'm gonna be surprised if many people in Acton who come to vote are gonna be too thrilled about marijuana facilities in town. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but, the town generally is pretty conservative. I don't think they're not gonna be looking to, have marijuana shops around
and
town.
there's a huge difference in that vote in November.
Yeah.
Of saying, I don't want my niece and my nephew or my kids to get a record for having an ounce of pot on them, so they vote yes.
Or I want to be able to smoke in my own
Yeah.
private house,
Versus, I want to have a grow operation on the land abutting me, right? I've already had 3 people come up to me, and I'm not that well-known in town. I had 3 people come up to me and say, by God, had just somebody bought some land next to me,
Yeah.
and they say they're going to grow pot on it, and I'm not happy. I'm like, well, we're doing what we can about that.
Well, as long as it's their property, the whole
If it-
personal
no,
side.
Commercial, not their own plants.
Right, yeah.
Commercial. Anybody can grow their own thing. I'm happy with that. God
Right?
bless
I
you.
mean, well, that's what I mean, is that people don't seem to I mean, I think there's a real lack of knowledge there. They don't understand that, for personal use, you're gonna see 6 plants popping up here and there.
Actually, you're not allowed to see it.
Well, but you know what I mean.
But I'm just being clear,
Right.
Some people
for
are
anybody
gonna-
who's watching. Right? I mean, you're allowed to have 6 plants, 12
12 is the maximum.
maximum
house.
per parcel, right? And they need to be labeled and all that. But anyway, let's put that aside. So, next steps?
Well, I got a couple things I need to run a report on first. One, we dealt with the MMA thing.
Mhm.
Two, I've talked to the folks in Alfred. A couple of things surprised me. One, when I first asked, have you done anything about marijuana? They said, oh, yeah, and Joyce sent me a copy of their zoning requirements for medical marijuana. Because we've been saying all along, you can't zone medical marijuana. Well, Alfred did. And essentially, they have X number allowed, and it's in the commercial zone, which in Alfred, of course, is 202. But
Right.
so, and it's
Yeah,
not a
jail.
big deal, but they did zone the location of medical marijuana. So then I called Joyce back and said, what about recreational? He said, oh, yes, we did that too. And here it is, prohibited. So this is not a moratorium. Marijuana facilities, which include cultivation, manufacturing, testing, retail sales, social clubs, are all prohibited in the town of Alfred. This was just added, I think, their last town meeting. So that's another town that, didn't go through the moratorium process. They just flat out said, no way. So that's, I guess, the extent of it. The other thing I wanted to talk, because I think this can be a resource for us. The legislative committee spent 7 or 8 months going at this. They had, in addition to Dan, they had 3 OPLA analysts working on this. The other 2 that you haven't talked to yet were senior folks. These are lawyers, basically, that have been writing legislation and dealing with legislative issues for many years, many decades. Jane Overton and Danielle Fox have been at this for a long time. And so Dan is the new guy, and I'm glad you had contact with him, but sooner or later, they had folks come to the legislature, come to Maine from Colorado, and I don't know about Washington, but they have amassed a lot of information over there, and I think we can get access to it
Mhm.
if we
I
ask
mean,
the right people.
he seemed he says, do you have any more questions?
Yes, I talked to
He's very
him,
friendly, yeah.
I talked to him prior to that September 23rd hearing, and he was very helpful, and mostly their analysts over there, whether it's OPLA or the other functions they have in the legislature, they're always very helpful, so, and if they aren't, we can light a fire under them.
Well, so far, I've been impressed with the
Yes.
people I've talked to in Augusta, generally.
They're very knowledgeable and they're very helpful, and,
I don't get it. I have a friend who's got nothing but, well, I think he's just,
angry.
he's a grumpy, I mean, more grumpy than I am.
Yeah.
But so far, my encounters in Augusta have been excellent.
Good.
I mean, I've had people that if they didn't know, they directed me to somebody who
Yes.
did know.
And if somebody isn't helpful, then we can do something about that.
Yeah, right, but I mean, I don't think that's as much of
So
an
far.
issue. It's not like dealing with the DMV in Maryland, okay? I mean, that's, they pride themselves in making your life miserable.
Been there, done that, bought the
I have,
license
I
plate.
have one other thing. On November,
You die sitting in, oh, yeah, right.
on November 13th, Maine Municipal Association is sending their bigwigs to what's called the 12-Town Group in Waterboro.
Mhm.
So their relatively new, the president, who I think is the town manager in Kennebunkport, I don't know her, their new executive director, who I have not met, and the new lobbyist, who I do know, Kate Dufour, are all going to be in Waterboro, and the public is invited at 6 o'clock, I think.
Well, when is
Yeah,
that?
It's a Wednesday. It's the 13th of November.
No, it's a Monday.
That's
It's my
the Monday.
birthday.
I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
What is it, your birthday?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because the 15th,
sorry.
you guys are going to Augusta.
That's right, and that is a
That's a
Wednesday. So it's a Monday.
Well, happy birthday.
Yes. in case let me just make sure I have the time
And that's in
right.
Waterboro.
Waterboro Town Hall, which is where they meet, 6:30. The public is invited. And so I don't know, I mean, they're going to be talking in very broad terms about a lot of subjects.
Called the 12-town group?
12-town group, and Acton is a member of that. There isn't 12 towns in the group anymore, there's about 10, but originally. And it's run by a guy named John Sylvester, who was a selectman in Alfred for years and years, and he's now not doing that, but he's still running the 12-town group. He was president for a while of Maine Municipal Association
Okay.
when he was a selectman, so he's very familiar with what they
Right.
do. And I'm gonna go over to that, because I got a bunch of issues, but I think there may be some conversation about
Oh, I'm
marijuana.
sure there will
There will
be.
be if we ask questions
Yeah,
about it.
right, yeah.
Encourage.
If I show up, there probably will be, that's for sure.
Well, I would encourage you to go and ask questions if you can, so.
Because I'm really, I mean, even though I'm pro, and ultimately, I think it wouldn't be detrimental to the town. I want it to be done right I think we should have something in place. To me, I just see the nightmare of Iron
Doing
Tails. Well, I see the nightmare of Iron Tails happening all over again.
Yeah.
Because we got poleaxed there by somebody
That
who
happened.
made outrageous promises, never delivered, and now we have this facility. That was a wonderful place when it was, right after, it wasn't the Romac Orchard place anymore, when Carl Davis went in there and created that to me is what I'd like to see that place become, and now it'll never be that again, but that's neither.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, we made a mistake in not doing, and it wasn't that the people didn't try to do something. The planning board gave them a run for their money, basically, down there.
Right.
But it was mostly about those gas tanks that were put in, and
Right.
they're polluting Loon Pond. That's what it was about. And that was an interesting subject, but turns out
It wasn't
Pollution
enough.
it wasn't
comes
the
in
right
many
subject,
forms.
right?
Right, it wasn't. I mean,
Hindsight is great,
I was involved in that as I guess, a interested observer or what have you. Tom Cashin
Yes.
was hardcore into Pat's face about the tanks.
The tanks.
And I was working with Tom at the time. I was in between bike shops.
Yep.
And I held the dumb end of the tape for Tom to make sure Pat's pit was meeting the required setbacks, and we got kicked out. It was ugly.
Those berms, he built those berms down the Milton Mills Road.
Oh, I
Remember
didn't
that?
know.
Remember?
I heard about something down there, but
Yeah.
So,
Anyway.
let me ask a question that may be out of bounds for this. So, you brought up the zoning of medical marijuana.
Yeah, in Alfred. They did it now. I don't know.
Yep, so here's my question. Putting aside those that exist today in Acton, and putting aside the fact that we were focused on recreational.
Yep.
Would it be out of bounds for us to propose zoning for future medical in the town of Acton? Question.
my opinion would be we need to check to see if
Yes.
Alfred has had any,
They claim they have one over there.
well,
think
what I
that's
mean is if
they're-
they've had any problems
Oh.
with somebody coming at them about that.
Or if they had to enforce it, or they realized
Yeah.
somebody's doing it, if they sent the code
Right,
officer.
and then have a court case as a result.
Because they don't
That's
have any police either. They have a code officer that's about the same as us, they're about the same size as us.
So I think,
Good point.
can you pursue that
On
with
the-
Jennifer?
Well, we can, but also on the 13th, when the MMA folks are there, I have at least one
I will
question.
let you focus that, because again, I'll be in Atlanta the whole week.
I have a couple of questions. One, does MMA know how many towns are passing ordinances or moratoriums? Do they have a list? And if they don't, I'm going to suggest that they start figuring out how many of their members, 490 members,
Right.
something like that. So
Wait, how many towns are in Maine?
that's almost all, I think it's close to the 490. That's
Right,
the number.
and,
Almost all
look
of
at a
them,
state like Washington, 290,
Right.
that's where,
Well,
You know,
those are 281 cities.
what's that?
Those are cities in
Okay,
281
but still,
cities, yeah.
there's less incorporated towns. A lot of the west is just county.
It is, yeah.
So I guess my point is that if the state is thinking they're going to incentivize this thing, and I'm having a problem with the state here, the amounts that they're willing to divvy up with the towns doesn't give a town much of a dollar incentive to get involved.
But if you look at this, the perverse incentive is there because in Washington State, the I-5 corridor, our equivalent, Portland and Bangor and those, right, are all for it. They're going to build them whether they get revenue or not out of it, and the state keeps the rest. I mean, Washington State's taken 25% to their budget, okay?
25% sales
Sales
tax
tax.
goes to the
Right,
state.
so $1.04 spent on pot goes to the state, and $6 million of that is shared. So they sold, I think, let's say it was
They're
$400
capped
million.
out at 18 right now.
Just for 1 year, and then it
Right,
drops
I
to
know,
6.
right, yeah.
But 400, let's say they sold $400 million in pot in the last year, 100 million is going to the state right off the top. And they're sharing 18 million this year and limiting it to 6 for every year after that. Shared evenly to all the towns that have retail sales. So, my point being, I think if Maine state legislators are looking at what's been done in other states, they're recognizing that, to your point, it's gonna sell anyway. People are gonna open up retail shops where people wanna have retail shops, and the towns be damned. So, I don't see them changing it, trying to
We
give an
we
incentive
don't
for it.
hear a
Well, no, they're
lot.
not gonna open up retail shops where they want to necessarily. They're gonna be,
Portland's gonna have them because Portland
well,
wants them.
right, I understand that, but, look, that's, they're
What I meant-
not, the town is not, the state is not getting as wide a distribution, they're not going to get as wide a distribution for sales with the way they're doing it. That's all I'm saying.
I agree, and I think that's
You know,
the experience in
I mean,
Washington
it's
State.
not good or
as
bad,
well.
it's just the way it is, and I think it's stupid.
But having said that, I think you look at Washington State, you look at Colorado,
Mhm.
same thing's happening, right? The difference in Colorado is they can do sales tax. Before we close out, because I suspect we're at the hour, I mentioned the medical zoning. We have 2 bars in town. Fait accompli. Would anything prevent the town from prohibiting any further and prohibiting, once those go out of business, that's it? Is there any reason we wouldn't do that?
I think that's another question for the 13th.
Okay.
I don't expect that those 3 people who are going to be there are going to be able to answer that, but what I want to pursue along that line is getting access to MMA's attorneys. Now, they have had, I don't want to say problems, but for every small town in Maine that has committees like this on various subjects, it quickly becomes apparent that the experts at MMA, that the town pays dues to belong as a member to, could be helpful. So they get inundated with stuff. So the question to Jennifer and to those folks on the 13th is going to be, who among your staff is answering questions, and who can ask the questions? Is it Jennifer that has to call with the questions, and we can funnel them through her, or whatever? I don't know, but that is a zoning question,
It absolutely is.
and I don't know the answer to that.
For us, the 4 actions that I see kind of next for us beyond what we're already doing, as I mentioned before, reach out to county leadership in both Washington and Colorado to get some more insight there. I've already reached out to the head of enforcement for Colorado, saying that I think, at some point in the near future, we would like to talk to a reputable, mid-size, Colorado-based grower, retailer, and manufacturer. I said it that way specifically because I don't want somebody who's going to say, oh, Maine's interested, let me give them the story they want to hear. I want to have somebody there tell us, as a retailer, how do you pick where you want to site something? What's the draw? What's the business plan look like? Manufacturer, same thing, and so on. So I think, would you guys agree that we would be interested in talking to some folks recommended by them?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
your guy's going to be here next week, we think, if he can.
Right, and he's a
Local guy.
he's a caregiver himself, and he's looking to get into the retail side of things.
And my only reason for asking out there is because I want to talk to, good-sized commercial and find out, what kind of investment did you make? How many people are you employing? What are you paying them?
And I'd like to find out what their Colorado rules are on wastewater treatment, et cetera.
I
Because,
think I have that, but I'll
but
look
yeah,
again.
but, because to me, if you have a grow, like say in Sanford, you have a grow, you're being a stupid owner if you're flushing it down the toilet, because the Sanford water bill is pretty brutal on commercial properties in Sanford. I'm very good friends with Dave Parent, who runs the water district there. And he said, we charge commercial at least 3 times as much as we do residential.
And that fee has to pay for their sewage. treatment plant
That's,
too.
it's
the
all,
issue.
well,
That's
no, sewage charge gets a charge too.
Right.
But, so the point is I'm thinking that a smart grow is going to, treat their water so that they can reuse it, they're going to, and then what I want to know is what do they do with what they flush out?
Right.
Do they flush it down the sewer? Because if they do that, then that's a major concern for us, because that's going to be a lot of stuff.
Well, and that's just, I'd be interested to know what they're doing in Sanford, and has the water district even thought about that yet?
Well, the water district's providing with water. It's a sewage district that has to deal with the effluent. And they have if you haven't seen their facility out there, off of 20, is it?
Well, it's pretty
sophisticated.
sophisticated.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea of what, Sanford has plenty of water, because their commercial water use has gone down over the last 5 years by like 50% because of all the businesses that left South Sanford. So they have plenty of water for these guys. It's just, it's not cheap.
So I will share one thing. A dear friend of mine, his birthday was this week. I called him up. Lives in Cleveland. And the health department, or fisheries department, sorry, was doing some testing of the fish, and they found high concentrations of Xanax and other antidepressants in the fish. Which tells you a little bit about
Well, if
water
you live in
treatment.
Cleveland, maybe there's a reason for that.
I lived in Cleveland for 3 years, so I know.
I used to go
All
there
right,
quite
we're
often.
just about there. We don't know what the governor's going to do yet. I
No, we
haven't heard
don't.
it.
No.
And so we may get to a point after a month more of meetings where we're just waiting. And we may stop meeting for a while.
Well, I'd say we,
I was gonna
huh?
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, we could probably get it to like a once a month for a while, if it looks like there's that window. I mean, I don't see there's any real emergency for us at this point.
If we're looking toward June, Ed Walsh basically suggested the other night that he'd like to see something on the front of the town meeting in June.
Okay.
So,
And he's the only one that's, I mean, the others didn't necessarily agree with that.
Right.
But that seems like maybe the direction they might want to go in. But
so I'm envisioning potentially, as a result of all this, a proposal that the town would be voting on. What might that look like, Richard?
I don't know, I mean, I've had doubts that we could collectively come up with an ordinance. I don't know, we have to decide how we want to present it, a report. The report might ask the voters to weigh in on each of the 5 separate things, or all of the 5, and we just saw what Alfred, I don't know how Alfred created this. Did they actually vote on 5 separate things?
I don't know,
Or did
but to
we
me,
can
that
find
would be
out?
the fair way.
Each one.
Have a separate warrant for each one.
And then maybe there's an ordinance also that we fashion up that the voters can vote on.
And I would say, if we go down this path, I think the first thing we want to have the town vote on is a prohibition. And if that, right, and then vote on, at the same time, are you for prohibition, yes or no? If you're not, are you for retail?
Oh, I see, break it
If you're
down.
for
break it out.
retail, here's the ordinance, yes or no?
I don't know what the result of that is. If you all of a sudden you get,
I think if you get the prohibition, you stop.
well, you'd have to say that in the,
Exactly, but that's what I'm kind of envisioning.
I don't know about, it seems to me that would be difficult to pass kind of a legal muster thing.
well, we can ask them on the 13th.
Right, yeah, I mean,
How have the
I'd say
towns
that,
got to a prohibition?
Right.
There's been some that have put them all in one.
right,
And there's, I think the Kennebunk and Agunquit Kennebunkport and Agunquit are voting
Prohibitions.
on prohibitions too, so I don't know exactly how they're
Right.
doing it, but, so that, we could break it up. The question is, if we break it up into, say, 6 or 7 different yes/no votes, you gotta be prepared to deal with the results of that, and they may surprise you. Maybe people are for prohibition and also for social clubs.
Well, but I think, forgive me, I think you could, I think
What
you
do you
could,
got?
well, but I think you could write it up in such a way that would say,
Yes.
if prohibition passes, all the rest is moot, right? If prohibition fails, then each one stands on its own, voted yes or no by the
And I don't know, that's a good question, again, for the lawyers, basically. Can you fashion up a vote like that? I don't
yeah,
know.
well, you see, you're counting on people, how many people whine about how confusing some of these these bills are.
Yeah, Lebanon
And-
Lebanon votes their whole town budget by referendum, and it's confusing for them, and they not always, but frequently have to go back and re-vote some stuff, because that doesn't,
My
sort of
only
work.
thought of that would be, to have it like that if we can
Yeah.
legally and appropriately. You avoid the fact of having to vote a prohibition up or down and then go back and do rest of it. I'm happy to put the effort in to come up with zoning and all that, the ordinances, but my preference would be that we include a prohibition as a vote.
Well, I think
We have to.
I think we have to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be okayed generally, I think, by the population.
Right.
But I think that even if we prohibit it, we should have something in the closet to pull out in case, because I just keep looking at what's happened in other towns at other times where, they thought they solved the problem by saying no, and 5-10 years down the road, somebody comes in, out-lawyers them, and next thing you know, they're looking at, we grow big pot, on 109, or, what have you. And if we have something that we can pull out in case of that.
And with the state giving us the umbrella, one way or the other, they're gonna give us the umbrella, and then they're all constantly changing up there over the years.
Right, exactly. They
You
can
don't-
take that umbrella away.
And we don't know what's happening, we aren't even aware of it down here, all of a sudden, bang, you've got,
Mhm.
so.
And I
It
think
would
we
just
need to
seem
have
odd
something
vote
in
a
place.
prohibition and still have the zoning.
Right, we can have that sort of stuff in place. Doesn't mean we need to use it. If we prohibit it, it's prohibited. But we have something in place in case there's, because I just, I just don't want the big money people to, because they're going to put pressure on Augusta. I see, seeing them doing the same thing they did in Colorado here,
We're seeing it
by
with.
changing that vertical sales thing. Because, when I heard about that, I went, oh, man, that
We're
sucks.
seeing it with the casino now.
Right, well, yeah, I mean, the casino,
So much
one
for-
guy's
so
going
much
to
for a-
have
So much for a
charge over that
citizens
whole thing.
initiative.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just wrong.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, that's just wrong.
And it's because the state has not elected to develop a statewide ordinance relative to casinos, so they've never done that.
There
Now
you
we're-
go.
Now we're open to referendum, the referendum game, and it's just not working
Citizens
for us.
wanted that one man to make all this money. Isn't that good of them?
Yeah, I know.
All right, we're done.
All right,
I
so
think
I
we're
think
set.
all of these last minute things are about getting us access to MMA's lawyers. The question is, how do we get our questions answered directly to them or through Jennifer or whatever, so we have to work on that the next week or so. So I envision we're here again next Friday at 6.
And I'll try to get Jason here, and
Okay.
we'll give him, we want to put a time frame on his, or do you want to just say?
I wonder if we should come up with the questions that we're gonna ask him first, because I feel like everybody could kind of overload him with questions. Like he could be here all night answering our questions.
So I
So I was
I
gonna
mean,
say.
he's a friend,
I was gonna- I
we're
was
friends,
gonna
but I want you guys to put his feet to the fire. I really do.
I was gonna suggest, have him maybe have 5 minutes of prepared remarks.
Yeah.
And then the rest question, and we limit it to 30 minutes total.
Right, well, yeah.
And if we want more time from him, I'm
We
sure
should
he'd be willing to
schedule
come
another
back.
time for him to, regroup and come back, because he is really knowledgeable, especially about the historical flow of this whole thing, because he's been at this for a long time. He's been a medicinal caregiver for, I don't know, a long, long time. I don't know the number of years, but he's been involved in the make pot legal thing for a long time. And he'll be able to give us some historical perspective. And he didn't reply to me when I told him that the 5% of 10% is chump change. He did not reply. And, because it is. You mean 5% of 10% is literally chump change. I mean, it's chump change. There's no other way to put it.
All right, well, thank you all. Virginia, thank you.